Last week at the club, the question was brought up, how do we throw switches on the main line during an operating session when all the switches are on the inside of the layout? There's no way to control those switches from the operator aisles. I came up with a suggestion that we make all of the switches on the main line, such as crossovers and anything connecting to the main line, such as the short lines or the yards, make those powered switches and have them controlled by DCC. What we have here is a Digitrax DS64. Now, the club actually owns this. This was in the DCC drawer. This is a 4-channel stationary decoder. And what it does is it simply hooks up to your track power. You could hook it up to a DC jack, but you could also hook it up to your track power. And I have it controlled by my Zephyr over here. And it just connects to LocoNet like anything else through, the standard LocoNet jack. And plug that back in. What I have here on this little board is just a little sample of how, say, one switch would work. So what we have here is we have our switch motor, and I've indicated that it's hard to see on the video, but when the pin's facing up, the switch is thrown. When the switch is down, when the pin is down, the switch is closed. That's connected to channel 1 of the decoder. It's just 2 wires, and ignore all this other. I just happen to have those. Only 2 wires going from here to here, just like any other switch. What I've set up on this side of the board is a sample switch. Now, forgive the giganticness of the switch. These video game switches are the only ones that I had that are momentary push button. What I have on this side is this switch would be a push button switch, just a regular old push button switch on the control panels that we typically have back by the throttles, back in the operator aisles. The way that the switch would be controlled is just simply push the button and it throws the motor. The way you know that the switch is thrown is I've got, we'll have status LED right above the switches, just like we have in the mill. When it's thrown, it's green. When it's closed, it's red. On this side of the board, I have the same kind of switch. It's just literally connected in parallel with this one to the decoder. There's switch inputs that for every output 1, 2, 3, and 4, there's also an input for switches 1, 2, 3, and 4. This switch here would be out on the fascia of the layout, along with an LED to indicate, which direction the switch is thrown. There'd be a number associated with the turnout, and there'd be a number with the switch so that the operator knows which is which, and maybe we could have the HO scale sign near the switch saying what number it is, so the operators know which is which. But there would also be an LED to indicate which way it's thrown. And it works the same way. Operator pushes the button, the switch gets thrown, and the light changes. Now, notice that if the operator throws it in the aisle, both the fascia light and the control panel light will change colors. And, either person can change the switch. It doesn't matter. You could hear the switch motor. You could hear the switch motor going. So that's the way the 2 people can control the switches. Next question that might come up is what happens during open house? How do we make it so that the public cannot just push the button and throw our switches? Well, easy enough. You have a aisle control disable switch. If I go ahead and shut that off, the fascia button no longer does anything, but the control panel in the back can still change the switch. Now notice that the LED out there still works, but the button can't do anything anymore. So that's how we can control it from 2 different places with DCC. The next nifty little function of this is how to actually control them from your throttle. Like, not only can you control them from the control panel, from the fascia of the layout, you can also control them from the throttle. And that's very simply done by this button up here, the switch button. When you press switch, you see SW0001 equals C. That's your switch number. So in our case, we're going to pick switch 1, which is already selected. So you would just simply type 1, and it'll pop up. Now down the bottom, there's this T and the C button that we have never used yet. What that does is hitting T or C will throw or clear the switch. So if I press T, It changes, and you notice the lights change as well, along with the position of the switch, and it's indicated on the throttle. If I hit the clear button, that will close the switch. And while that's operational, you know, you can still control them from backstage, if you will. You can still control them from the fascia, unless you have the switch off. Nice thing about this feature is the fact that it is DCC. Any switches that are controlled by one of these decoders here will also be can be controlled via JMRI in the future if we want to do that. And that is a quick little experiment on how to control switches, one, via DCC, and two, from two different locations, and also being able to lock out the fascia switches so that the public can't throw them.